Hello, and welcome to English for Everyone, where we practice real-life American English. Today we're going to learn some great phrasal verbs and learn to avoid some important mistakes. So let's get started. Today we're going to practice with these two phrasal verbs, screw on and screw in. It's very important to use the phrasal verb because if you don't use in or on and just say screw, it sounds bad. Sometimes we use screw for the F word, and the word screw by itself can refer to sex. So we don't want to use this incorrectly. It can sound inappropriate. So remember, screw in and screw on. Let's look at the difference. First, this is not correct.
Screw.
I cannot say screw the light bulb. We have to use the phrasal verb screw in. Screw in the light bulb.
How many babies does it take to screw in a light bulb?
How many guys does it take to screw in a light bulb?
When you change a light bulb and you put the new one in, we use the phrasal verb screw in. You have to screw in the light bulb. You have to use the phrasal verb. You cannot say screw the light bulb. It's not correct, and it sounds weird. And this is also not correct.
Usually caps, we can screw them. So screw is this movement that you screw the cap. So this is to screw the cap. So this is a cap because you can screw it.
I cannot say screw the cap. I need to use a phrasal verb. I need to say screw on the cap. Screw on is a phrasal verb and it's a separable phrasal verb. So I can put the on before the object or after the object. That means I can say screw on the cap or screw the cap on. Both are correct, but I have to use on. It's necessary for the phrasal verb. I can also use a pronoun it. If I use the preposition it, I have to put it in the middle. Screw it on. Pronunciation, screw it on. Screw it on. You hear that T and it change to a fast D because it's between vowels. Screw it on. Not screw it on, but screw it on. So the options, screw on the cap, screw the cap on, or screw it on. So I can say, he needs to screw on the cap, or he needs to screw the cap on, or I can say he needs to screw it on. Let's practice. Does he need to screw on the cap? That's right, he needs to screw on the cap. Does he need to screw the cap on? That's right, he needs to screw the cap on. Does he need to screw it on? That's right, he needs to screw it on. Very good. This is also not correct.
The opposite of screwing the cap is to uncap. So you can uncap the bottle. I uncapped the bottle and screw the cap.
I cannot say uncap the bottle or uncapped the bottle in the past. The verb uncap exists, but it's just not used in common English. We say it a different way. We say unscrew the cap. So you screw the cap on, and then you unscrew the cap. Use the verb unscrew. And don't talk about the bottle, talk about the cap. Unscrew the cap. In the past, unscrewed the cap. But don't say uncap or uncapped. It's just not common. It sounds strange. People don't say it. So example, he needs to unscrew the cap. Or in the past, he unscrewed the cap. Let's practice. Does he need to unscrew the cap? That's right, he needs to unscrew the cap. Or in the past, did he unscrew the cap? That's right, he unscrewed the cap. So if you want to explain exactly what's happening, we use these words. Screw on the cap, the phrasal verb, screw on the cap, and unscrew the cap. But really, in conversational English, when people are talking, they don't really explain exactly what you're doing. It's more common to say, put on the cap, or take off the cap. These ways are much more common. So I can say, he needs to put on the cap. Or I can say, he needs to put the cap on. He needs to put the cap on the bottle. Let's practice. Does he need to put the cap on? That's right, he needs to put the cap on. Does he need to put the cap on the bottle? That's right, he needs to put the cap on the bottle. Does he need to put on the cap? That's right, he needs to put on the cap. Or we can go the other way and say take off the cap, or take the cap off, or take the cap off the bottle. Let's practice. Does he need to take off the cap? That's right, he needs to take off the cap. Does he need to take the cap off? That's right, he needs to take the cap off. Does he need to take the cap off the bottle? That's right, he needs to take the cap off the bottle. So you can say screw it on, and you can say unscrew it. They're both correct. But it's more common to say put on the cap or take off the cap. This is also not correct.
Lids are usually bigger and you don't have to screw them. And you don't have to screw them.
I cannot say you don't have to screw them. You don't have to screw them? This sounds really weird because the verb screw by itself means to have sex. We need to use the phrasal verb with on. You need to screw them on. You don't have to screw them on because them is a pronoun. We have to put it in the middle. You don't have to screw them on. So be careful using screw as a verb. Use the phrasal verb, screw on. And we have other phrasal verbs like screw up. To screw up means to make a big mistake. Screw up in the present and the past screwed up. It means to make a big mistake. He made a big mistake, so I can say he screwed up. I told him not to screw up, but he screwed up anyway. Let's practice. Did he screw up? That's right, he screwed up. Or if I have an object, like he screwed up the project, I can use the pronoun it, but I have to put it in the middle. He screwed it up. The T in it is pronounced like a fast D. Screwed it up. We hear the D in screwed for the past, screwed it up. And the T, also a D, a fast D. It up, it up. He screwed it up. The idea, he screwed up the project. It is a substitution, a pronoun for the project. So I put it in the middle. He screwed it up. He totally screwed it up. Let's practice. Did he screw it up? That's right. He totally screwed it up. Or I can use screw up as a person. It's one person, so I have to say a screw up. A screw up is a person who makes mistakes all the time. If somebody makes mistakes all the time, I can say this person is a screw up. Using a because it's one person. He's a screw up. He's always making mistakes. Let's practice. Is he a screw up? That's right. He's a screw up because he's always making mistakes. Or I can use this phrasal verb, screw over. Screw over is when you give someone a bad deal. You take their money, but you don't do the work. Example, they screwed me over. They took my money, but they didn't do the work. Example, he paid them a lot of money to do the job, but they didn't finish the job. So I can say they screwed him over. Pronunciation, screwed him over. With him, the H is silent. Because him is not an important word, we don't stress the word, the H is silent. Screwed him, screwed him. Link the sounds. They screwed him over. He paid them a lot of money to do the job, but they didn't finish the job. They screwed him over. They really screwed him over. Let's practice. He paid them a lot of money to do a job, but they never finished the job. Did they screw him over? That's right. They screwed him over. So remember, be careful using the verb screw. It can mean something bad. Use the phrasal verbs screw on, screw up, or screw over. Don't use the verb screw by itself. It can be confusing in a bad way. This is not correct.
The next, cap. Cap. So this is called a cap. Usually students confuse between cap and lid, so they ask me, what is the difference?
I cannot say students confuse between cap and lid. If I use the verb confuse in the present, I cannot use the preposition between. I have to say students usually confuse cap and lid. I cannot say students usually confuse between cap and lid. I have to eliminate the preposition between. So it's correct to say students usually confuse cap and lid. Let's practice. Do students usually confuse cap and lid? That's right. Students usually confuse cap and lid. But if you want to use the preposition between, you can. You just have to change the verb. We don't use confuse, we say get confused. If you change the verb to get and use confused as an adjective, then we can say between. So it's correct to say students usually get confused between cap and lid. This is correct. Students usually get confused between cap and lid. Let's practice. Do students usually get confused between cap and lid? That's right. Students usually get confused between cap and lid. This is also not correct.
The next word is a verb that we usually use in the context in which we are sitting next to someone on the plane or on a public transportation, wherever we are.
You cannot say a public transportation. The word transportation is not countable. I cannot have one transportation or two transportations. Eliminate the article a, public transportation. I don't take public transportation, but he takes public transportation. Remember, no a. He takes public transportation. Let's practice. Do you take public transportation? Very good. What about him? Does he take public transportation? That's right. He takes public transportation. If you want to count transportation, you have to say what it is. Example, he takes a bus, or he takes a train. You can also say he takes the bus, or he takes the train. But if you say transportation, do not say a. It's not countable. Thank you for watching. And if you like this video, subscribe to our channel. And if you want to become a member, click the join button. And we'll see you next time.